The fact that Keir Starmer is a thug is hardly news to those of us who witnessed firsthand his treatment of Jeremy Corbyn and other left-wingers who were outside his immediate faction within the Labour Party. How Starmer has killed Labour's left wing. His brand of right-wing authoritarianism has abolished the radical tradition embodied by Corbyn. But his behaviour over the Gaza vote, the SNP's ceasefire motion that was to put to the House of Commons on Wednesday, has really exposed this man for who he is to a much, much wider audience. House of Commons descends into chaos over Gaza vote. Tories and SNP walk out after accusing Speaker of siding with Labour on selection of ceasefire amendment. We all saw that Keir Starmer and his faction were prepared to burn the Labour Party to the ground to prevent a pro-Palestinian leader of the party and to further enhance his career. Then again, on Wednesday, we saw the same thing. Any measures, no matter how extreme, again, to protect Israel and to advance his own career. Commons chaos as SNP Tories walk out over Hoyle's help for Starmer over Gaza. Hoyle selected Labour's weak Gaza amendment for debate against Commons protocol. The historical protocol for what should have happened on Wednesday is not in dispute. It should have been the SNP's motion, their motion, clear and unambiguously, without conditions, demanding a ceasefire now. That should have been the motion that was selected. But Keir Starmer couldn't have that. Keir Starmer couldn't tolerate that for two reasons. Firstly, it used the phrase immediate ceasefire now. Keir Starmer wanted to insert the word humanitarian into that phrase, so it became an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Now, that changes the whole meaning, the whole context, because what he's saying is that he wants a humanitarian ceasefire, i.e. a pause which will allow food and water and medical supplies to get in, a little respite, a little rest, and then Israel can start all over again with its genocidal rampage across Palestine. So that was reason number one. Reason number two was that the SNP motion also talked about the fact that Israel was administering collective punishment to the whole of the Palestinian people for the crimes of a small minority, i.e. Hamas. Now, that's important because the minute you start to introduce phrases and get phrases such as collective punishment into legalistic records such as the House of Commons, well, you are opening the door to future possible war crime prosecutions because collective punishment is a war crime. And that war crime charge might not only be laid at the door of Israel, but to those who knowingly supported that collective punishment, such as the UK government. So that was two reasons why the SNP motion, as it stood, was totally unacceptable to Sir Keir Starmer. Labour calls for immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza ahead of Crunch Commons vote. A Crunch Commons vote on Wednesday will be made on an SNP-led motion which calls for an immediate ceasefire, i.e. without the word humanitarian shoved in the middle. Now, the strange thing about this phrase, collective punishment, is that it had already been used a few days earlier at the Scottish Labour Party conference in Glasgow. It had already made its way into a motion and had already been passed. Anas Sarwar, the leader of Scottish Labour, had told us how proud he was of this motion, and it was the same conference at which Keir Starmer spoke as the keynote speaker. Conference supports Israel's right to protect its citizens in line with international law, affirms that Hamas remaining in Gaza is not tenable, and agrees there is no justification for the collective punishment of 2.2 million citizens in Gaza. So how did Keir Starmer decide to cope with this threat of the SNP motion? Those twin evils, the fact that it called for an immediate ceasefire now, and that it talked about the collective punishment of the Palestinian people, well, and of course don't let's forget the other threat that was there. There was also a threat of a major rebellion, even larger than the one that took place on the vote in November on a similar SNP motion. That was another danger he had to head off, obviously. Well, how did he cope with it? Well, Keir Starmer is a bully. He's a bully and a thug. Those within the Labour Party, especially those on the left, have witnessed it firsthand exactly what a sociopathic bully and thug that man is. So, of course, that was his go-to strategy. He did what all bullies do. He identified somebody who, by all accounts, is a rather weak and ineffectual and, most importantly, easily intimidated man to bully. Enter Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons. Now, this is the man who selects which motions are going to be selected for debate on the floor of the House. It should have been the SNP motion. Everybody agrees on it. Even Lindsay Hoyle now agrees that that should have been the case, considering he's apologised profusely. Subsequently, and Keir Starmer, remember the great forensic legal brain that is allegedly Keir Starmer, he also knew that it should have been the SNP motion, but that didn't stop him with his strong-arm tactics. BBC Newsnight journalist posted, "Senior Labour figures tell me the Commons Speaker was left in no doubt that Labour would bring him down after the general election unless he called Labour's Gaza amendment. The message was, you will need our votes to be re-elected as Speaker after the election, with strong indications this would not be forthcoming if he failed to call the Labour amendment." But it seems Lindsay Hoyle didn't cave in immediately, so the man himself had to step forward to apply the thumbscrews. According to sources within the Labour Party, a senior Labour Party MP offered Hoyle outside for a straightener just after PMQs. Hoyle declined and was then allegedly paid a visit by Starmer, who made consequences clear. It wasn't long before that allegedly became definitely, as The Guardian reported. Hours from the biggest rebellion of his leadership, Starmer decided to intervene personally and visit Hoyle in his office behind the House of Commons chamber. But over the course of time, the briefing started to change, and suddenly it all became about the safety of MPs. The Guardian continued, "Those briefed on the meeting said the Labour leader warned Hoyle that Labour MPs' security was at risk. Many had been deluged by criticisms, threats and abuse since abstaining on a similar motion in November. With hundreds of protesters congregating outside Parliament, they worried worse might be to come." Now, let's be crystal clear on something. No Labour MP has ever been attacked or injured by a pro-Palestinian protester ever. It has never happened. Yes, there's been noisy demonstrations. Yes, I've no doubt there have been furious and angry emails sent to MPs from constituents. But this idea that pro-Palestinian protesters, the thousands of people that have taken to the streets across UK cities Saturday after Saturday, families, teachers, doctors, social workers, ordinary members of the public, the fact that these people are now being smeared as somehow potential terrorists or actual terrorists by Starmer and Hoyle to cover their duplicity and their skullduggery is just truly, truly disgusting. And another sickening aspect of this whole spectacle was the fact that some of these Labour MPs and the apparatchiks within the party, they were actually congratulating themselves because it's all a game for them. It's nothing to do with real people, real lives, real babies being slaughtered in horrendous numbers, innocent women and children being slaughtered. It's all a game. They've never left student politics, these people that surround New Labour, the new Labour, I should say. and surround Keir Starmer, and they were congratulating themselves. This was a game well played as far as they were concerned. They had stitched up the SNP. They had won the vote. Really? Apparently, Labour MPs are celebrating in the Commons tonight that their wrecking amendment went unopposed and passed. It gives you some indication of how this mob will act in government if they are treating that absolute farce as a victory. But let's just take Keir Starmer at his word. Let's just, for a minute, believe him, right? When he went to visit the Speaker of the House, it was all about what he perceived to be threats to Labour MPs. That there was people out there angry at Labour's failure to support an unambiguous ceasefire without conditions, and that he somehow thought the machinations of Wednesday in the House of Commons had somehow solved that problem for them. Listen here, if people were angry that Labour MPs abstained on the vote in November, the SNP's motion about an immediate ceasefire, how do you think those people feel now after watching the totally despicable display and the bullying and the thuggery and the intentional sabotaging of a much stronger, clearer motion from the SNP that referred to an immediate ceasefire and referred to the factual collective punishment that Israel is inflicting on Gaza, to be replaced by Labour's wishy-washy word salad of a motion that was obviously designed to do nothing but protect Israel from criticism. Well, I'm telling you, Keir, you may not have seen anything yet.